All right, welcome back, team. I'm so excited today to talk about one of my favorite topics, exercise made simple. As I've mentioned in the other courses so far, the other chapters of this course, sometimes you just see the craziest stuff on the internet or you hear it from a buddy about how to exercise. We kind of have some really good data out there now, some really good research to follow on what works and how we should be exercising to improve our health overall. So, we are going to stick to what are the best recommendations based on the best available evidence for exercise. So, as far we've covered sleep, we just covered nutrition, and now we're going to dive into exercise. And looking ahead to our next session, we're going to cover stress management. This is a really busy slide, and I apologize for that. A couple of the slides are going to be busy in this, but I wanted you to have the reference. So I'm going to talk from these, but again, you have these recorded now and you have them for reference. So a couple of key principles of exercising. The first one is intensity. So moderate intensity exercise is kind of where we hit the threshold for where we're getting a benefit from it. So moderate intensity would be things like a brisk walk, swimming, or cycling. And for the purposes of our talk, we're going to make it really simple and say conversational or non-conversational. So moderate intensity is I'm on a brisk walk with a friend and I can have a conversation with them. Vigorous intensity or non-conversational is I'm working hard enough that I'm breathing hard enough or where I'm not able to easily have a conversation. Okay, muscle strengthening exercises. These are activities like lifting weights or using resistance bands, body weight exercises. These are things that help improve strength. They make our muscles bigger and stronger and tend to make us resilient humans. Consistency, we're going to talk about what we need to get in for consistency. Maybe the most important thing here is variety and enjoyment. So I'm going to make some recommendations today, like I said, based on the best evidence. And what you need to take away from that is how can I do this in a way that I want to do it because it's actually fun. I feel the benefit from it, and I'm going to continue to do it because I enjoy it. There's so many options available for you to dive into here. Health benefit, I'll just let you read this slide for yourself. But I think at this point in time, we should know, I think we all do know the health benefits of exercise. And it's just a choice of whether or not we're going to get into it or not. And we know the predictable health consequences of not exercising. CDC published a series of guidelines for what we need for physical activity. The first one here is just for adults. So this is the most general category. So we need to hit 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity exercise or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic activity per week. So those minutes add up and you can do them over the course of the week. It's more minutes if you're hanging in that moderate intensity zone. It's fewer minutes if you're in the high intensity zone. And one really important thing is that this is the minimum requirement, and there are significant additional benefits if you exceed this minimum requirements. Muscle strengthening should be 2 or more days per week. This is where our bias lands as physical therapists, because this is where we see the biggest issues with folks. Strength tends to correlate the most with resilience, and strength also tends to correlate the most to doing the things you want to do with the people you love. So if we want to really help people have that limitless life, we are really leaning into the strength training for pretty much all of our patients. All right, we'll pop to the next slide. This is for older adults, again, 65 plus. This is a slight tweak to the last one, which is just that they should really be doing some balance and fall prevention activities. And we'll dive into those in the next slide. I want to talk, this is a little bit more detail on intensity. And so this gives you a max heart rate as a way to really get a little more specific on what your heart rate training zones are. There's a formula under there that's pretty simple to put together. Again, if you want to keep it really simple, the key pieces are conversational or non-conversational. So if you're exercising, you can feel your heart rate getting up, maybe you're sweating a little bit, but you're still having a conversation with someone, that's great. That's moderate intensity. We're just going to need to do a little bit more of that. Where if you're doing a high intensity exercise, like maybe you're really pushing that jog or run, or maybe you're in a high intensity interval training class or a spin class where there's no way you're you're talking to the person next to you because you're breathing, working really hard. That's kind of that zone 4 or 5 for your heart rate zones. Some people really enjoy getting into the data. So if you like this, probably the best way to get better at it is to grab a wearable. So like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, or some of the other options available there that will track your heart rate while you're exercising. And then you can really pay attention to where you are. And that can be pretty fun way to kind of just pay attention and learn a little bit more about your body. This is, again, another busy slide, but I wanted to have it for your benefit here. So I'm going to focus on the bottom part of this slide. Or a common conversation for us is that we have people who are at the gym and they're strength training. They think they're strength training, but they're not achieving a really key principle, which is overload. So how do we know if we overload our muscle enough to build strength? So let's talk about Joe, who's been going to the gym for 10 years. Joe is going through the circuit, hitting the machines, and he is doing 3 sets of 12 reps on every machine. And he hasn't really progressed his weight in the last few years on the machines. He's not lifting more weight. And he's probably, if he's honest, by the time he gets to rep number 12, he could probably do another 10 or 12 reps on there. He just has gotten into that rhythm. So overload is necessary to actually build strength or get the benefits that are listed on this slide for strength training. So what that means is that you could maybe do 11 or 12, but like not 15 or 20 reps. So you're really tired out by 10. That's a perfect spot to start with strength training. And that is about 70% or 75% of your 1 rep max formula to calculate like how heavy you could lift there. But that's just something we use to help people understand, okay, now we're over that threshold of overload where you are going to start seeing the benefits of strength training. And you can see as you go down there, down the list, like all the way down to 4 reps. So if I'm done by 4, I'm super heavy. I can only lift that weight 4 times. That's really close to our 1 rep max, or the maximum amount we could lift in that exercise. And that's where we need to be, is somewhere between that 4 and 10 reps where I'm tired out by that limit. That's how we know that we're strength training. So what I would tell someone at the gym, or what I would tell a patient, is take a week or two and lean into this, where you start to pay attention to where you're tired out by. So if you're doing, let's say you're doing a chest press machine at the gym or a squat at the gym, and you need to add some weight to it, you're going to go ahead and do your first set and try to find that spot where you're tired by 10. Maybe you could get 11 or 12. And then we're going to do 2 or 3 sets of that at that intensity. That's how we figure out where we are. And then one thing that's really helpful to get better at this, is actually to grab a notebook or grab notes on your phone and just pay attention to what your weights are. So when you're following up the next time you go to the gym to get your second or third day of strength training in per week, you're going to know right where to pick up from that and be able to jump in. And you can have some confidence knowing that you're hitting overload, you're actually building muscle, building strength. And that's where you're going to get all of these benefits from strength training. If you're currently in a plan of care with a therapist, with one of our PTs, I'd highly encourage you to talk through this concept with them about strength training. How do I know if I'm getting it right at the gym? That's a great conversation to have with your therapist. Balance training, everyone understands this. I will put the disclaimer out there. It's really important that if you're doing balance training, you have to be safe. So this is just broken down into a handful of categories here. I think the biggest thing here is that it's challenging enough that you feel a little bit uncomfortable while you're doing it. That's a really important piece. So static balance exercises are just being in one place and practicing balance, whereas dynamic balance exercises are a little more advanced. These are things where you're actually moving and trying to practice your balance while you're moving. If you have balance difficulties, it's probably really important that you're working with a PT to address that. And then by the time you're done working with PT, everyone who's 65 and over should be working on their balance. So you should have a plan of how you're going to address these either at the gym or at home or in an exercise class. Obviously, our bias as physical therapists is that everyone can benefit from exercise. And really where we come into this equation is when people are stuck. We help people all the time who are on a spectrum of, am I well enough, or is there's something that's limiting them from actually getting into exercise? And we can come alongside you, help you address the current limitation, and more importantly, we can actually get you off on the right foot doing it independently. And that's really our long-term goal, is lasting lifestyle change for people, so that you can continue to progress in your fitness no matter where you're starting from. Okay, so we use this tool called an ideal week, and I find it to be really helpful. We talked last time in nutrition that what gets measured tends to get improved. The next thing we might say is that what gets scheduled tends to get done. So we call it your ideal week. And if we know that we need, 150 to 300 minutes of activity plus we need 2 days of strength training, here's your first step in that direction. I want you to actually grab your calendar and I want you to find a time to block that exercise in, however it works for you. But actually look at your calendar and schedule that. And this would be a great thing to jump into the discussion section on our app and ask people for tips. Share what's working well for you. Everyone would appreciate your input. Here's that big reference that I cited for the physical activity guidelines. And I'm really looking forward to hearing how people are progressing with this, seeing how people are plugging in exercise into their ideal week. And as always, here's to your limitless life.